All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call the General Government Joint Committee Subcommittee to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Assemblywoman Backus, Assemblywoman Brown-May, Assemblywoman Kasama, Assemblyman Miller, Assemblyman O'Neill, Senator Goycochea, Senator Harris, Assemblywoman Peters, Chair Neal.
Here. Okay, so we have a series of budgets that we're going to hear today, and I'd like to welcome the Department of Administration to the table. I guess we're going to see you like all session, yes? All right, then. Okay, so we will start with budget account 1015. We'll ask questions after each budget.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll start with I'll start over again. Jack Robb, Director, Department of Administration, for the record. We will start with Hearings and Appeals Division today. I will be going through that as we do not currently have a Hearings and Appeals Senior Officer. She retired in the end of January, so that position hasn't been replaced, so I'll go through it today. Hearings and Appeals to provide fair and independent dispute resolution, hearings, and adjudications in timely and efficient manner while providing due process to all injured workers, employees, insurers, and others subject to their jurisdiction. Hearings officers, they're the initial part of the process. It's a very informal process. They're more of a dispute resolution and try to get parties to resolve in a timely manner. Appeals officers, they are much more formal. People are sworn in. They handle workers' compensation, Division of Industrial Relations, victims of crime, Medicaid, purchasing division appeals. Proceedings are recorded. Like I said, they're sworn in. Appeals officers are appointed by the governor, and they're appointed for 2 years at a time. Special appeals officers, they are also appointed by the governor with 2-year terms. They are independent contractors, and they hear non-workers' compensation cases. They have interlocal agreements with Department of Employment, Training and Rehabilitation, Division of Human Resource Management, Mortgage Lending Division, Department of Education, Department of Transportation, State Department, Board of Cosmetology, and State Fire Marshal. In Las Vegas, currently we have 9 appeals officers budgeted and 7 hearing officers budgeted. We're currently down 1 appeals officer, and we have 4 special appeals officers. In Carson City, we have 2 appeals officers, 2 hearing officers, and 3 special appeals officers. Base budget funding for 50 employees and associated operating cost. This year, we're looking for an addition of administrative assistant to support scheduling and increase the hearing requests. Year 1, $51,000. Year 2, $60,000. Subscription to Westlaw is another enhancement, $11,393 in both years, and standard computer replacement of $16,824. That's what we have. It's a small agency, and it's paid for through apportionment from, it's not a general fund agency, it's paid for through people that have insurance.
Workers' compensation.
What's that? Workers' compensation, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So I have a couple of questions on this particular budget before we move forward. Can you please discuss the challenges in scheduling hearing requests and indicate if one new admin assistant position will allow the agency to eliminate the backlog and meet the 30-day statutory deadline?
Jack Robb, Director, Department of Administration, for the record. Thank you for the question. It will help. This one agency wasn't on my radar when I took this job. Hearings and Appeals, I knew I was getting it, but I didn't understand all the problems that came with it. I've spent a considerable amount of time with insurance industry and representatives from the insurance industry, the legal counsel on the insurance side. I've spent quite a bit of time with the people that get hurt and their legal representation. I've traveled to Las Vegas to meet with hearings officers, and we've had all agency meetings trying to discover and find out where the problems are. I can tell you there's a problem on all three sides. It is not just the ability to schedule. It is not just the ability to get hearings. When 40% of the cases in the hearings department are de facto denials, that means the insurance company or their representative did not get information back timely to the people that had claims. It hits a statutory deadline and it becomes a de facto denial. That is a huge driver of the caseload. Continuance of cases is a huge driver of caseload. People on both sides not showing up to hearings or appeals, unprepared, and continuances. And when they say they're going to continue for 30 days, but our calendar is so stacked, they don't come back in 30 days, they're coming back in 6 to 10 months. We are currently scheduling things into January. We have a January calendar in hearings and appeals currently. There's a problem on all sides. When I talk to all sides, they all point at each other, and everybody else has the problem. I can tell you there needs to be some fixes, but the fixes need to occur on all sides.
I want to follow up on that. So when you say all three sides, because you mentioned, counsel, you had mentioned the insurers, but what about internally? What about the appeals officers themselves? Because I'm going to ask you this, because what I've heard, because they're appointed, they don't like direction. They feel like I am governor's appointment, therefore I may be king, and therefore I don't have to listen.
Jack Robb, for the record, Director of Department Administration. Thank you for the question. I can tell you we've had conversations with them trying to figure out how to give them more direction. There's a reason that we currently do not have a senior appeals officer. We're looking to get the right person and make sure we have the right person to be a leader of that division, to get people to do their jobs. Not saying that they're not doing their jobs now, but there was a complaint that they were not in the office. And I heard that complaint. We had a all-agency meeting with a week and a half ago, and we've required hearings and appeals officers to not work from home anymore. They're supposed to be in the office. So we're trying to make changes. We're looking to see who is going to be the proper leader to make sure that there is some accountability within that office. But as I stated before, it's not just accountability in our office. We need to work on that. I'm not shying away from that one bit. There needs to be work done on all three sides. And the bad part is the people needing relief to get those claims settled so they can move on with their lives, and so employers and everybody can move on and get past it. We're not doing it in a timely manner. We need to get better, and it's one of my main focuses right now.
Thank you for that. So I have another question, but just to put a finer point on what you just said, I know you just came in and you came from another division, but what my understanding is what you're experiencing is not new. And so have you ever considered just making that statutory change, right, to make them accountable? So there isn't this round robin of, well, you really don't have the final say here, right? Because the lack of responsiveness is not new, and it needs to be managed in order to move things forward. And so it might just be, who do you answer to?
Jack Robb, Director of Department Administration, thank you again for the question. We understand there's multiple bills that are being proposed, and that is another consideration of not appointing a senior appeals officer at this point. We want to see what is in those bills, see the outcome of those bills. We do not want to place somebody into a job that may be a 3-month job because laws will change down here. I do think there needs to be some change on all sides, and we're definitely not innocent on our side.
Okay. So I'll ask my next question. So I know there are two legal secretary positions that have been filled. Can you please explain the existing duties and responsibilities of those legal secretary positions approved by IFC and the support those positions currently provide to reduce the backlog in meeting the 30-day statutory deadline?
Jack Robb, Director of Department Administration, for the record. Again, thank you for the question, Chair Neal. We did have those additional two here, legal secretaries put in. Right now, we have a vacancy of 3 in Las Vegas. So even though we added 2, we're down 3. When we added those 2 into hearings and appeals, they were on the hearing side. And then we got 2 hearings appeals officers at the same time with the legal secretaries. We brought those people in to help with the scheduling, but their caseload was so high at the beginning and the learning curve, they could not schedule. We needed to hire temporary people to help them come in and schedule. We had temporary staff come in and help schedule because we had some vacancy savings and some other things. So we did have some temporary staff come in through manpower. They got us caught up. We got back into statutory compliance, and the budget authority for those individuals, those temporary workers, we ran out. We had to let those individuals go away, and at the present time, we're slipping back out of compliance.
So thank you for that response. I just want to ask one additional follow-up on the legal secretaries. When I looked at the level of work that they were doing, well, I'm surprised they haven't rioted, number one. But tell me about the legal secretary relationship. Like, so it's a legal secretary and then it's the appeals officer that's in between. So pretty much, so based on what I heard or the rumors that, okay, so you have one person in the layer that's absent or not unwilling to participate in the workload, and then they're loading all of this stuff onto the legal secretaries. Because what I read, it was like $1,000 a month that they were required to review. And I was just trying to do the calculation in my head about like how those secretaries were pretty much on the hook for what really I felt like the imbalance, the workload was imbalanced. So are we going to address that going forward?
Jack Robb, Director of Department Administration. Thank you for the question. That is something we are addressing currently, and I was on the phone at 7:30 this morning trying to address some of those items.
Members, any additional questions on this budget? Senator Goicoechea and then Assemblywoman Kasama.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Robb, I guess, what's the level of expertise to be an appeals officer? It sounds like, are you going to be able to recruit these people? Number one, if you can't even get the legal secretaries and we're working them to death, are we better off elevating those legal secretaries? Can you just move them up?
Jack Robb, for the record, Director of Department Administration, through you, Chair, to Senator Goicoechea. The requirement to be an appeals officer requires a law degree. They have to be a practicing attorney. You think about what these individuals get paid, it's hard to recruit attorneys into that type of salaried position.
Thank you. I think you answered the question.
Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. My question is regarding we have a 30-day statutory deadline. And if it's not being met, it's an automatic denial, and then I'm assuming there's an appeal after that. Is that correct?
Jack Robb, for the record, through you, Chair, to Assemblywoman Kasma. It does not go to the appeals division. The de facto denial goes to the hearing officers, which the hearings officers do not need to be attorneys. I understand there's some push with proposed legislation to make them all attorneys also. But currently, the de facto denial goes to the hearings officers.
So I guess what I'm wondering is we can sit up here as legislators and dictate something has to be done within a certain time. But if the practicality is you can't meet it, is it better, even though we'd like to do 30 days, is it better, for example, if it was 60 day, would that help the caseload so there aren't all these appeals?
Jack Robb for the record. I appreciate the question, Assemblyman Kazma. That's some of the things I've discussed with both sides, both legal counsels representing the insurance industry and employers, and legal counsel representing the injured workers. There's not a huge appetite on both sides. I do think it would be a good step forward. I really do. We need insurance companies to do their jobs, to try to settle these cases before they become a hearing or appeal. Just like everybody, insurance companies are short-staffed too. So they just don't have the bandwidth to get through them. But once they get that de facto denial, they get kicked into our system, and then it just grinds our system to a halt, and it prolongs the ability to get these things settled. I do think a longer time for the de facto denial could help.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Assemblyman Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious, and forgive me if I if I didn't catch this already. There were 2 unclassified hiring officer positions and 2 new legal secretaries that were approved back in 2022, right? Those were hired, right? Those positions are filled?
Jack Robb for the record, yes, those positions were filled.
Okay, and so at that time, we were looking at 100 things being scheduled out at 120 days and a backlog of 3,000 hearing requests. With those new hires, were we able to cover any ground? Like, were we able to move the 120-day schedule up or eliminate the backlog? Where are we in that progress with those new hires?
Jack Robb, thank you for the question, Assemblyman Miller. The legal secretaries did help, but like I said, we got 2 new ones, and we're down 3. It's a hard job to recruit. Being down 3 doesn't help. What really helped the most was the temporary schedulers, and that's why instead of having the temporary schedulers, that's why we're looking at getting an AA2 to help the scheduling process along. Everybody's plate is full, and we just need additional support on the scheduling side.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. So any additional questions? I want to have more conversation offline. You're probably the right person to move the needle within that unit or division, because I think you get a sense of the problems that are going on, and you're going to have to make some hard choices. And I think you're good with making hard choices and making someone else uncomfortable. So, because it sounds like that's what you're going to have to do, right? Is help someone find their moment of peace somewhere else. So we will go ahead and move on to the next budget of 1052.
Good morning. I'm Mike Strom for the record, Administrator of the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records Division. Thank you for a few minutes this morning to talk about what we do. The first slide you see in front of you is a high-level org chart that includes the 3 budget accounts within the division. Archives and Public Records, that's where our state archives, our records management, and our imaging preservation services department are. The State Library, that's where library planning and development, our technical and access services areas, and talking book services, that's where those things reside. And the Nevada Library Cooperative, we are the administrative and fiscal agent for them. Quickly, a little bit about what we do. We support libraries throughout the state by connecting them to federal funds, such as the Library Services and Technology Act grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. We support libraries by providing consulting services for programs that promote initiatives such as literacy, summer reading programs, and training, and by allocating the collection development funds in our general fund budget. The Nevada Talking Books Services Program provides access to audio and braille books and magazines, plus digital players to all Nevada residents who are qualified due to visual or physical impairments or a reading disability. We collect and provide access to state government documents and published works about Nevada. The State Archives collects records from state agencies and elected officials, and some of their most used materials include records from the Governor's Office, Secretary of State Corporation and election records, legislative minutes, and enrolled bills. Our Records Management Unit works with state and local government agencies to draft retention schedules that guide them in how long to retain records. We store nearly 32,000 boxes of active records for state agencies in the State Records Center. We digitize and microfilm records to increase efficiency and access to information. And most of all, we connect people with information, and this is the common theme in nearly everything we do, and we strive to be as efficient and effective as possible in doing so. Focusing on archives and public records, Budget Account 1052, their overall goals are to modernize systems, equipment, and workflows to increase efficiencies and to educate and train employees for success in the digital records landscape. In support of these goals, their ongoing initiatives include building the technical infrastructure and skills to manage digital records, to complete the Inmate Records Archive project, which is funded by an ARPA grant and consists of culling and digitizing thousands of boxes of inmate files received from the Department of Corrections, and the transition from microfilming to rapid capture digitization to meet increasing state agency demand for reformatting. 1052's enhancement requests are building capacity to meet digitization needs of state agencies and local governments by transition microfilming to rapid capture digitization. Year one is to purchase technology and equipment, most of all, an overhead camera, computer, software, setup training, and server space. Year two is just the network server space for that one. The second enhancement request is building knowledge, skills, and resources for archives, records, and imaging preservation staff. The third there is transferring an enterprise service for document management and workflow automation from the Nevada State Library and Archives, Budget 1052, to Enterprise Information Technology Services, Budget Account 1365. The numbers in front of you there, the year one, 260,188, and the duplicate number in year two, that's the amount of money that other agencies have been transferring to us to pay to adopt this on-base document management and workflow service. And the last one before you today is the standard computer replacement, the one-shot $21,000 and change. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we will go to Senator Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What are the anticipated efficiencies if the on-base document management system is transferred to EATS?
Mike Strom, for the record, Administrator of NSLAPR. Thank you for the question. When we expect that by every time an agency joins the program right now, we have to draft interlocal agreements, we have to update contracts, we have to have that contract renewed, we have to get IFC approval to have our spending authority increased. And it is truly an enterprise service right now, and we think that by having it in the enterprise service, by having it go with an enterprise level, that we will be able to eliminate a lot of those steps and a lot of the time that it takes to bring people on board.
Matthew Tuma, Deputy Director, for the record, just to add on to that, I think this is an example of where a pilot program was really quite successful and where archives and records really did the great work of utilizing this technology and working with some initial agencies to prove that it was of value for agencies, and more agencies want to participate. And so with the nature of the contract management and how this works, it's much more in the bailiwick of EATS and their functionality, and something that they do on a regular basis, and part of the, it's integrated within their normal operations. And so now that it's beyond the pilot phase and it's really in the adoption phase, and multiple agencies want to join a document management system. You saw a couple of weeks ago where one of our other divisions has a deck unit to to integrate a document management system. They would be an additional customer in this program, and it really fits the staff and workload and budget capabilities of EATS much more so than archives and public records.
Any additional questions on this budget? I have a question, though. So in the, I guess the system where you're sharing documents, I was just super curious because I saw that like Post was sharing Division of Healthcare, and I'm wondering what kinds of items are they actually sharing within this system, records?
Mike Strom, for the record, Administrator, NSLAPR. My understanding is that many of the agencies it's their daily work that they're sharing, and this is helping with workflow, and you can create files online, electronic folders and things like that, and so you're able to work through processes and those sorts of daily activities much quicker and more efficiently.
Matthew Tuma, for the record, just to Deputy Director, just to add on to that, it's like Administrator Strom said, it's a lot of daily functional activities to eliminate a lot of the physical paper needs for agency operations.
Thank you for that. I was just super curious. I was wondering if they were sharing things that were subject to retention, but it sounds like not.
Mike Strom, for the record, Administrator at NSLAPR. I believe that's true because nearly every document is subject to retention, and so that is true. This is really increasing office efficiency and their workflow and things like that. So, yeah.
So just one final question, because I just need to understand this. So if someone did an information request, who would it go to? If this information is being shared there, would it come to you?
So ultimately, an information request would go to the agency that would hold those documents. Now, when those agencies receive those requests, if archives and public records are holding the physical document, then that agency will make the request to archives and records. It depends on if it's a physical document or if it's an electronic document. Sometimes if it goes to an agency and it's an electronic document, they'll need assistance from EATS in support of searching those documents. But ultimately, the request would go to the individual agency that produced that document.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. So I think that wraps up the questions on this particular budget. And we will move to budget 1358, which is purchasing.
Good morning, Chair Neal, members of the Joint Subcommittee. I am Kevin Doty, Administrator for State Purchasing. As our name suggests, state purchasing has the legal obligation of helping agencies obtain goods and services. On the goods side, that ranges from the contracts we stand up for state employees to buy office supplies, all the way up to we occasionally buy a helicopter. On the services side, it ranges from the smallest services contracts all the way up to an $11 billion Medicaid contract. So it's a pretty large range of what we do. We have a great staff that manages all those needs for the agencies with very customer service-oriented. In addition to those obligations to obtain goods and services efficiently, state purchasing also has the obligation to warehouse surplus property and try to reuse it. If we can't, we auction it. We have the Preferred Purchase Program, which is a wonderful program that allows us to go directly to Opportunity Village and similar organizations without having to go out to bid. We can use Opportunity Village for copying work, for janitorial work, that kind of thing. And as I've said many times, you can argue, depending on your beliefs, what may be the dumbest money the state spends. But the smartest money we spend is the money we pay to Opportunity Village to do high-quality work for the state and to assist Opportunity Village in the great work that they do. We also have the direct client service agreements are something that we're now responsible for. It's the provision of services directly to clients, HHS, DETR. This is something that we assist agencies with. There are hundreds of them, and then there are hundreds of service agreements released off of each of those. That's some of the most important work that gets done through our office because it impacts people on a very important way, healthcare, job opportunities, and things like that. That's the overview of state purchasing, and I'd be happy to take any questions about our budget.
Thank you for that, Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And my questions are going to pertain to Enhancement 225. Please discuss the impact to qualified participants of suspending the Preferred Purchase Program in FY fiscal year 2020 and the agency's plan to reopen the program if the governor's recommendation for the additional positions is approved.
Kevin Doty for the record, thank you for the question. We've never suspended the Preferred Purchase Program. We haven't been able to staff it the way we want. The 2017 legislature transferred the Preferred Purchasing Program from DETR to purchasing. Historically at DETR, that program was staffed with anywhere from 2.5 to 3 FTE. We didn't receive any new FTE at that time. So we tried to do the best we can and have continued to engage in outreach. And that includes trying to get new agencies signed up. That includes talking to agencies about using the providers. And we have obligations under the law to check and see how the work is progressing and report on that. So it's a lot of work, and it's been dumped on our staff, and they're doing an amazing job. But one of the reasons why we're requesting additional staff is so that we can expand and do a better job with Preferred Purchase because it is such a great program.
I appreciate that. Madam Chair, may I ask one more question on this same enhancement? I think I can. How did the agency determine the one new purchasing officer position, the one new purchasing technician position, and the one new management analysis position are needed to address the workload in administrating the Preferred Purchase Program and the direct client services agreements and the collection and oversight of administrative fee revenues?
Kevin Doty for the record, thank you for the question. The various roles they will be playing are the purchasing officer will be facilitating the request for qualifications we do to sign up direct client services members. That is something we do on a rolling basis, and we have hundreds of people, and that is a function for a purchasing officer to do. The management analyst will be responsible for managing those contracts and also working on the Preferred Purchase Program and managing that program as well. And the purchasing technician will be assisting with all aspects of Preferred Purchase and the direct client service agreements and the collection of the administrative fee, because we do need more help in that area.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Chair Peters.
Thank you, Chair. So I was reading through our backup documents to understand how the process of the administrative fee works, and I was shocked at maybe giggling a little bit about kind of the like the round robin nature of it. Like we have the funds and then we pay the master service vendor and then we collect the funds and there's like so many administrative hands on this money. And I thought about some of the contracts that I have worked in, right, where we have like a withholding. So when we sign into a contract, we have an agreement that we will that the entity we've contracted with will have a withholding of a certain percentage for every invoice that we send them, and then at the end, the full amount will be reassessed, and we will get any additional revenue back if things, depending on the contracted language or whatever. And I was wondering if you had considered something like that for this 1% fee, why we have so many administrative hands on it, and if that would help with like what seems to be an honor system right now on what is being reported to your agency directly. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Kevin Doty for the record. Thank you for the question. And holdbacks are an important part of how we do contracting and state purchasing. It is important to keep a certain amount of money back, say on a deliverables-based contract, to make sure the vendor complies completely. With our administrative fee, it is assessed only on statewide contracts. That means it's a contract that we at State Purchasing put in place for all agencies to use. And agencies use those contracts without us knowing about it at State Purchasing, actually. We don't have the technology with the state's current financial system to do real-time monitoring of the use of those contracts. So the best we can do regarding the spend on those contracts is to check the spend later and assess on it. And it might hold up the process for the states to do their contracts and get the work done if we tried to assess it up front. And since we don't know how much of that work's going to get done, that's just kind of how we're stuck doing it for now. But I agree, it's a burden for my staff, and they're doing a tremendous job. And the admin fee has collected significant revenue since the legislature approved it in 2017. It's what funds our e-procurement system, which became vital during the pandemic. We were able to continue to obtain goods and services while everyone worked from home. I don't know how we would have done that without an e-procurement system. And now we're actually bringing in so much money through the admin fee that it is reducing the assessment that agencies pay for state purchasing. So I think the idea of putting the admin fee in place was a very good decision by the legislature, and we're going to continue to do our best to assess it and maximize the revenue that comes in through it.
I have a couple of follow-up questions, if I may. First of all, how much revenue is it? Can you quantify that for us?
I will let my revenue person answer that.
Daniel Marlowe, Administrator for the Administrative Services Division. In FY22, we brought in a little over $2.4 million. It's been a slow process as we've gone through renewal of the agreements and adding the admin fee. So since we have gone through several sessions now, that's slowly increased, and we've really kind of hit more of a plateau. We're not increasing anymore. We expect that to kind of stabilize around this 2.4, 2.5 million for the time being.
Well, I certainly appreciate the desire to want to handle this in a better way. I'm not in love with the honor system. We have had a history in the state of the honor systems not going well on either side, right, with contractors or with state agencies. So any process we can put in place that creates some better accountability and more efficiencies, I'm supportive of. But I just think there's a better way to do it than what we've got in place right now. And if that's it, that the agencies do a 1% withholding on their when they work with these master service contractors, and then assess that to you guys, I just feel like there's a better way to do it than having it floating out there at the end of the quarter to be managed in that way. Working in the world of managing these kinds of grant programs or contract programs, that creates a lot of administrative burden. So I would encourage, I guess, working on how to create those efficiencies, and maybe the answer is that these two positions can help do that. But
Matthew Tuma for the record, Deputy Director. Thank you very much for that feedback. And yes, this deck unit is specifically designed to get better efficiencies and to make sure that folks are paying the appropriate fees as the state moves forward with replacing its financial system as well. That should hopefully add some new tools of accountability that purchasing can work with fiscal staff on as well.
Can't wait for all this tech to get stood up.
Thank you for that. Members, any additional questions on the purchasing budget? Okay. Oh, so Assemblyman Miller, you would be the next on.
Got it. My questions are actually related to the warehouse in Southern Nevada. Since the lease for the space associated with storing the PPE at the Southern Nevada warehouse is recommended to be funded with federal coronavirus recovery funds, why is the program officer position that's currently managing the warehouse not recommended to be funded with the same federal grant funds?
Matthew Tuma for the record. So when the work program designating ARPA funds for warehouse was approved, there was also a companion work program that had a portion of the warehouse funded through state purchasing fees and their revenue. So it's a dual use facility, and the needs for purchasing are going to continue into the future. In the base budget, there's a continuation of leasing for some of that space for surplus property and for the other statutory obligations on warehousing that purchasing has. And so that's going to continue in the future. In addition, there's a one-shot appropriation for some additional warehousing purchasing needs. And so this staffer would be supportive of those needs into the future.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question, Chair. Well, maybe two questions. So, one, what's the agency's plan to fund the ongoing warehouse maintenance and operating expenditures through the 23-25 biennium?
So, Matthew Tuma for the record. So, some of the some of the costs for funding and support of the warehousing needs are identified through ARPA and the continuation of ARPA funds, as well as a portion of that is continuing through state purchasing fees and state purchasing costs. So it's going to continue that dual role through this next biennium. We all know ARPA funding will be expiring, and so that will be going away after the next biennium. And so any additional obligations for warehousing needs and for warehousing support would be borne by the purchasing division.
Okay, thank you. I'm good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. So I just want to have a quick follow-up. So I want to go back to the first question that Assemblyman Miller asked when you talked about the ARPA funds and the warehouse. Was there general fund involved in the lease?
Matthew Tuma for the record, no. There was no general fund involved. It was entirely funded through a combination of ARPA funding and state purchasing assessments and the 1% fee.
Okay. Thanks. And Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. I see the one shot for the building, purchasing the warehouse building, 7.1 million. And so my question is, and then we have the continued lease for the PPE equipment, are you looking at moving those items into this purchased warehouse? And if so, when would that occur? And then also my understanding is with the PPE equipment, it has an expiration that it will start to be no longer effective, and that then we'll start disposing of it. So along with that question, do we need as much room still as since we will start to be disposing of these items?
Kevin Doty for the record. Thank you for the question because the warehouse we inherited and currently are leasing in Las Vegas was operated by the Division of Emergency Management. And we inherited it on October 1st, and there were more than 7,000 pallets worth of PPE. We have been in the process of trying to push that PPE out as fast as we can, give it away wherever we can to hospitals, daycare providers. We reached out to Opportunity Village recently, and they're going to be able to take some. Department of Corrections has been a good customer of our PPE. So we've connected with a lot of people. We're pushing it out as fast as possible. And the goal is to get out of that space in a year and a half. And at that point, the one-shot appropriation for $7.1 million will hopefully have allowed us to buy a warehouse in Las Vegas, which is more cost-effective than leasing a warehouse space. A warehouse space that meets purchasing's needs for surplus property, and we'll have a small amount of that, and the federal surplus property program as well, and hopefully a little space for what PPE remains at that point. But you make an excellent point regarding the fact that this does expire. And that is why we're trying to push it out as fast as we can, and so that it does get put to use.
So the building is really more designed for other inventory items that come under your jurisdiction versus PPE, because you're hoping that will be a small component at that time.
Kevin Doty, for the record, yes, we have the statutory authority at state purchasing to operate warehouses, but I don't think anyone envisioned that we would be operating a warehouse full of PPE. That's something we're doing temporarily.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any additional questions on this? All right, so then we will go ahead and move to the next budget, which is 1352.
Okay, good morning, Chair Neal, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Texera. I am the Deputy Risk Manager for the Risk Management Division. The Risk Management Division has one office in Carson City and operates 7 full-time employees. The division provides insurance, claims, safety, loss prevention, risk management consultation to state agencies and employees. All the duties of the division are outlined under NRS 331.182 through 188. Our mission is to protect and preserve state personnel and property. The division identifies and analyzes exposures to risk, and it selects and implements appropriate risk control strategies. Programs are monitored for continual improvement and enhancement. Our division's goal is to minimize the probability, occurrence, and impact of accidental losses and to continually improve services to the state. Our division's philosophy is that we must be proactive versus reactive, and that prevention is better than the cure. The Risk Management Division has 2 activities. The first activity is to manage workers' compensation risk. The division provides statutory workers' compensation benefits per NRS 616B.612 to all state employees and volunteers with the goal to return them to work as soon as possible after an injury. In addition, the statutory heart, lung, hepatitis, and cancer benefits for police and fire personnel are also fall under this activity. The division provides educational resources for wellness, fitness, and correction of predisposing risk factors to assist the employees in maintaining their conclusive presumptive benefits. The division also coordinates and oversees multiple occupational health contracts for the provision of police and fire physical exams under the Heart and Lung Program. The second activity is to manage property and casualty risk. The goal is to reduce the financial impact resulting from property, automobile, and liability losses to state agencies. This includes the procurement of insurance policies, administration of self-insured auto physical damage property claims, and consultation activities. We provide insurance coverage for aviation, bonds, crime, excess liability, property, workers' compensation, and other miscellaneous coverages requested by state agencies. We review contracts for insurance requirements. We provide mandatory training to employees with some of the classes including defensive driving, workers' compensation, accident investigation, and workplace violence. The base budget continues funding for 7 employees and associated operating costs. We have 2 enhancements. E226, this funding will cover travel expenses needed to provide mandatory training to agencies and allow staff to receive training for professional development to help us be more efficient in our risk management processes and practices. And E710 for standard computer replacement.
Thank you for that presentation. I will go to Chair Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So looking at our high reserve levels, can you talk to us a little bit about what your intention is to address those high reserve levels that are in this year's budget?
Daniel Marlowe for the record. Several aspects play into that. First is the rate development process. When we have the governor's recommended budget, we develop the initial projected rates, and we work with governor's finance office staff, and then after GovRec, we work with your LCB staff on developing the rates. Throughout that process, we provide information of current expected reserve levels ending in the current fiscal year. So that process happens throughout, and any excess reserve, and on the same token, any shortfall in reserve is accounted for in the new rates. So excess reserve, the rates would be lowered and we'd spend down in the next biennium. For workers' comp specifically, that's been traditionally approved at a 120-day reserve. It is an operating reserve, but also a liability reserve. So our intent, because of the current reserve level for workers' comp, that rate will adjust with that through the process. I will also note that in January, Work Program 62366 was approved, which reduced workers' comp reserve by $6.7 million, which is not accounted for in the reserve in GovRec. So that's already been reduced following that, and again, through that rate development process and working with staff, that's all accounted for, and those reserve levels will be adjusted down to end the 2021-23 biennium, or sorry, 23-25 biennium at 120 days.
So we'll see those in the final closing documents.
Daniel Marlowe, that is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any additional questions on this budget? Well, that brought us to our final budget, and so I don't know if there's any additional commentary, but that's pretty much the close of the budgets that we're going to hear for today. And I will go ahead and open up for public comment. So BPS, is there anyone on the line for public comment?
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Okay, is there anyone in the room for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and adjourn General Government Subcommittee.